Welcome to The Explainer. We're all about taking tricky topics and breaking them down into clear, dynamic presentations.
So, what can a single marshmallow teach us about success? Well, as it turns out, it can teach us two very different things. See, there's a super famous story about marshmallows and teamwork, and then there's another one about marshmallows and willpower. And you know what? People mix these two up all the time.
On one hand, you've got the Marshmallow Challenge. That's all about team building and innovation. On the other, there's the Marshmallow Test, a classic psychology experiment on delayed gratification. Our whole goal today, kind of like a good teacher, is to make sure that by the end of this, the difference is crystal clear. You'll never get them twisted again.
All right, here's our game plan. First, we'll unpack the two different stories. Then we'll dive into the teamwork challenge, followed by the willpower test. We'll also look at how that test has been challenged recently. And finally, we'll tie it all together to see what these two marshmallow tales really teach us.
Okay, let's jump into our first story. This one is all about teamwork, and it's a real lesson in the power of doing things.
So what exactly is the Marshmallow Challenge? It's this simple, fun design exercise. Teams get 18 minutes to build the tallest possible freestanding structure using just some spaghetti, tape, string, and of course, a single marshmallow on top. The goal here is to teach some really important lessons about how we work together, how we innovate, and why building prototypes is so valuable.
The rules themselves are super straightforward. You get your kit, 20 sticks of spaghetti, a yard of tape, a yard of string, and one marshmallow. The goal? Build the tallest freestanding tower in just 18 minutes. And the one big rule, the entire marshmallow, uncut, has to sit right on the very top. Simple, right? But it's how different teams tackle this that tells the real story.
So here's what typically happens. Most adult teams, right? They spend almost the entire 18 minutes planning. They talk, they strategize, they design the perfect tower on paper. Then, with just seconds to go, they build it and pop the marshmallow on top. And what happens? The whole thing collapses. It's a disaster. Why? Because they missed a huge hidden assumption. Marshmallows are way heavier than you think.
And this is where it gets really interesting. If you look at the average tower height, guess who consistently wins? Kindergartners. Yeah, you heard that right. Their towers are often more than twice as tall as the ones built by recent business school graduates. So, how on earth is that possible?
Well, the secret is all in how they work. The kids don't waste time trying to plan the perfect tower. They just start. They grab the marshmallow, they stick some spaghetti in it, and they build a little something. They see what works and what doesn't. It's this cycle of prototyping and getting instant feedback. They figure out early on, hey, this marshmallow is heavy, and then they build their tower around that fact. All right, let's switch gears to our second marshmallow story. This one teaches a totally different lesson. We're going from a lesson in doing to a lesson in waiting.
So this second tale is all about a concept called delayed gratification. You've probably heard of it. It's just a fancy way of saying you can resist a small, immediate reward to get a bigger, better one later. This whole idea was made famous by the psychologist Walter Mischel in his experiments at Stanford way back in the 70s.
The experiment itself was brilliantly simple. A kid was left alone in a room with a marshmallow. They were given a choice. You can eat this one marshmallow right now, or if you can just wait 15 minutes without eating it, you'll get a second one. And then the researcher just walks out. So what happened? Well, it turns out only about a third of the kids were actually able to wait for that second reward.
And for decades, this test became legendary. Follow-up studies tracked these kids as they grew up, and the findings seemed, well, huge. The kids who waited tended to have higher SAT scores. They were described by their parents as more competent teenagers. And get this, 40 years later, brain scans even showed differences in the parts of the brain linked to self-control. The story became, your ability to wait for a marshmallow could predict your entire life success. Wow.
But, like any good story, there's a plot twist. And in recent years, scientists have taken another, harder look at the marshmallow test. And, well, the story has gotten a lot more complicated.
So researchers started asking some really important questions. Is a child's success really all about their individual, built-in willpower? Or could there be something else going on? Something in their environment that influences whether they wait or not?
And this is where that simple, powerful story starts to break down. A big study in 2018
found that a child's economic background actually explained away about half of the original effect. Then another study showed that trust was a massive factor. If a child had learned from past experience that grown-ups don't always keep their promises, they were much less likely to wait. And that makes total sense, right? Why would you wait for a reward from someone you don't trust? So the conclusion now is that this test, it's just not the reliable crystal ball we once thought it was.
Okay, so after all that, where do we land? Let's bring our two very different marshmallow tales back together and figure out what they really teach us. So, lesson number 1 comes from the Marshmallow Challenge. It's a really practical tool for innovation. It teaches us that success often comes from doing and prototyping, not just endless planning. You have to build something to find the hidden problems, like that surprisingly heavy marshmallow, before it's too late.
And the second lesson? This one comes from the marshmallow test, especially with the new research. It's a much deeper truth about what success depends on. It's not just about having some kind of superhuman willpower. Our ability to plan for the future, to delay gratification, is deeply connected to our environment. Can we trust the system? Is it logical to wait, based on our life experiences? Our circumstances matter just as much, if not more, than our personal grit.
So here's how we can tie this all together. Think of it like this. The challenge gives us a method for achieving success, a how-to based on doing and prototyping. The test, on the other hand, reveals a fundamental truth about success, the why or what it depends on, like trust in your environment. One is about the action of building, the other is about the conditions that make building worthwhile.
And all this leaves us with a couple of big questions to think about. When you look at your own work, your own projects, what are the hidden assumptions, the heavy marshmallows, that you haven't tested yet? And maybe even more important, how does your own environment, the trust you have in the systems around you, shape your willingness to wait for that bigger, better reward down the line?